welcome to this discussion of Genesis chapter 12. Yes, diving deep as we, in person, actually, for the first time in a while. And we are picking up with the story of Abraham. Now, we're introduced to Abraham in Genesis chapter 11, but he's comes on the scene then, and 12 includes the call of Abraham, but also we're going to be focusing on, as we are in this series, God intervening in certain situations. And in this case, Abraham has to go to Egypt and gets himself in a little bit of trouble, and God intervenes, as we will see. And this also happens again in another place in chapter 20, and we might look at that also, but we're definitely going to focus on Abraham and his time in Egypt. Now, Abraham, as we'll see in this reading here, he's traveling. He starts out in Ur in chapter 11. They travel to Haran. So he goes from basically, that's about 700 miles, what I've found out. So kind of southern Mesopotamia to like the northern part to like kind of modern day Turkey almost. And then they travel down to Canaan, which is another 300 miles, 400 miles. And then they end up in Egypt, which is another 300 miles. So that's 300 miles from Bethel to Egypt. So a lot of travel. And he is following God's call to go to this land, but he'll encounter a few issues when he gets there. And then, so without further ado, Bill, would you like to read? What translation are you reading? I've got ESV.
I'm going to read complete Jewish Bible.
Okay.
Want me to read all of 12 or?
1 through 20, which I guess is the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
It gives us some context as to why they had to go to Egypt as soon as they arrived where God told them to go.
Okay. Now Adonai said to Abram, "Get yourself out of your country, away from your kinsmen and away from your father's house, and go to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you are to be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, but I will curse anyone who curses you. And by you all the families of the earth will be blessed." So Abram went, as Adonai had said to him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. Abram took his wife Sarai, his brother's son Lot, and all their possessions which they had accumulated, as well as the people they had acquired in Haran. Then they set out for the land of Canaan and entered the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place called Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. The Canaanites were then in the land. Adonai appeared to Abram and said, "To your descendants I will give this land." So he built an altar there to Adonai, who had appeared to him. He left that place, went to the hill east of Bethel, and pitched his tent. With Bethel to the west and Ai to the east, he built an altar there and called on the name of Adonai. Then Abram traveled on, continuing toward the Negev. But there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down into Egypt to stay there, because the famine in the land was severe. When he came close to Egypt, and was about to enter, he said to Sarai, his wife, "Here now, I know that you're a good looking woman, so that when the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife,' and kill me, but keep you alive. Please say that you are my sister, so that it will go well with me for your sake, and so that I will stay alive because of you." When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians did notice that the woman was very beautiful. Pharaoh's princes saw her and commended her to Pharaoh. So the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. He treated Abram well for her sake, giving him sheep, cattle, male and female donkeys, male and female slaves, and camels. But Adonai inflicted great plagues on Pharaoh and his household because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this that you have done to me? Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say, 'She is my sister,' so that I took her to be my own wife? Now, therefore, here is your wife. Take her and go away." So Pharaoh gave orders concerning him to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had.
Thanks. Now, I know this is kind of a cliche that people always say, well, I saw something I've never seen before. And I can't believe I didn't really realize this in reading this account, but it is a foreshadowing of Exodus. And I did a search to make sure I wasn't the only one who thought that. Apparently, that's a pretty common thing to see, but I just kind of saw it in reading this because I usually associate it with the other story of Abraham going somewhere and his wife telling them she's his sister. But we'll get to that whole foreshadowing of Exodus thing. But so we begin here with Abraham going to this land. Now he's traveling probably about 1,000 miles in total to go from his homeland, his previous homeland, to this new place that God is directing him to go to. And there's a little bit of disagreement on if he heard God's call, because the Bible kind of makes it seem like maybe he heard it in Haran, that they were going that direction anyway. But nonetheless, he was going where God told him to go. And this was the land that God told him, would be for his descendants. There were some problems, though. There were other people there already. And these people in the area were practicing child sacrifice, things like that. They weren't, the friendliest types. And also Abraham didn't have an heir yet. That's something we kind of forget. He's already 75. He didn't have any kids yet. And then to top it all off, as soon as they get there, there's a famine. And it said the famine was so severe that they had to pack up and go to Egypt. So it was a pretty bad famine. I wanted to ask, just kind of at first here, God tells Abraham to go to this place. God can, of course, control the weather and pretty much anything God can do, right?
Yeah.
What was the purpose of this famine? Of course, it did prompt them to go to Egypt, and this, you could say maybe it was like so this whole thing would kind of unfold how it did. But why didn't God just provide for them there, or make the famine not as bad? I mean, I know that might be a silly question to ask, but the timing just is not very good. You finally get there, and then you set up shop. I mean, he gets there and he sets up his tent, starts to settle down, and there's a famine. I mean, does that strike
That's
you
a
as
good
odd?
question.
Yeah.
And
I think God had to bring about what he did to put Abraham in position to really show his faith
yeah,
where he needed refining.
well,
Um,
and he certainly doesn't make it easy for him, right? Uh, it's not like he goes there and then everybody else leaves, and
yeah.
you know. So Abraham's known for his faith because he had to believe that God was going to make all of this happen, and he really never saw this come to fruition. I mean, he saw his son Isaac, right? And I mean, later on, that I mean, it'd be well after Abraham's time that this really comes true. Now, God certainly helps Abraham throughout his life, but they have to go to Egypt, and Abraham's just kind of this sojourner his whole life, pretty much. I mean, there's this and just these 1,000 miles. This is just the first. I mean, he travels at least 2,000 miles over the course of his life, which is a lot for somebody back then. I mean, he ends up they go to Egypt and they have to go back. Then Lot gets kidnapped and he has to go chase after him, and um, he has a hard life, and he passes all these tests of faith, but they get to Egypt and he tells Sarah, uh, you're very beautiful. Now she is kind of older, but apparently she was.
Yeah,
He knew that she would be noticed by. Oh, what's that?
that did. Um, sorry if I'm a little slightly unfamiliar with the kind of origin story here, but
Sarah's probably in her 70s when this happened because Abraham
did
was.
so did
Abraham was
the
75.
nation there kind of start from a catfishing game? He catfished
But,
Pharaoh and got uh like a bunch of stuff from it and then left.
It does kind of seem, I never thought about
well,
that.
yeah, that is kind of a strange part of the story, is that it mirrors the Exodus story, because in the Exodus story they leave Egypt with all the goods, right? And you
I
have the
can't believe the
plague.
Pharaoh didn't just kill him when he found out and at
Yeah.
least take his stuff back.
Have we ever really looked into Abraham doing this? Does this show a lack of faith? Does this? I mean, he was being
Doing the sister
realistic.
thing
Yeah.
because he wasn't instructed to do that.
I mean, I don't I don't
I don't
see
know.
God.
It's tough because there are a lot of actions that, I'm sure God wouldn't have doesn't send an instruction booklet with every instruction, overarching instruction that he might give. So
Yeah.
uh there are a lot of actions that he would have to take on his own accord. I don't know where you draw the line there.
I mean, that is true, and I mean, we have the luxury of looking at the story from our perspective, and we know, yeah, of course God's going to do all this other stuff later on, and Abraham's not going to, God's not going to let Abraham get killed, of course, but he's living through this, he's going through this, he just had to go through this famine. I mean, you do kind of wonder what he's thinking. uh will God let them take my wife and you know kill me? Is this part of, is it, we're not really told what he's thinking, but
Well, you have
I
to.
mean,
To me, I think Abraham was just nothing. In the first place, he goes into Canaan
yeah,
and sees the land of Canaan. Now, I think God did that to let Abraham know what God was going to give his children down the pike.
Yeah.
I think he did that on purpose. And then we had this famine, a severe famine. Now, it wasn't severe enough to make the Canaanites want to go fight the Egyptians for food, but it was severe enough to make this very large household go to Egypt to try to live. I've tried to figure out how many people we thought were in this household. And I've come up with some wide range of people. You know, there were,
I've heard, well, this is after the fact, but I've heard when he was chasing after Lot that he had like 300 people, but I don't know. I mean, what were you hearing?
yeah, I was thinking 250 or 300 people because you had slaves and their spouses. You know, you had Lot and his family and uh, uh, his slaves and their families, the people who took care of his livestock and their families. I mean, you had a whole entourage of people for whom he was responsible. So he heads into Egypt with all these people. And he's figuring that Pharaoh is going to kill him because his 60 to 70-year-old, admittedly beautiful wife is worth taking.
But apparently she was, because they did notice her. I mean,
I think at 75 then, you look a heck of a lot better than as we age now.
I think what's strange to me is that he did not do it once, he did it twice.
he did it what?
And really, I like that story for a weird reason that even Abraham proved to be a human being like us. He is a good man, God tell him go, so he goes. And yet, he lies and cheats, you know, just to say, oh, it's my sister, and certainly allow Pharaoh to take her, and he will not say anything until Pharaoh maybe heard about it and called him, and he said, why did you do that? And then he said, that's his second time or he did it. So really, he is just a human being. And about a different point, about them going to, you know, Syria and Turkey and Syria, then having the famine, this is life. I mean, I think God did not create it, did not have everything planned from day one till the end of the world. Just life will happen and you will have your choices, and it will be purely your choice. What do you choose? And his choices, certainly for the gross part, was good that you obeyed God and left his people. But as we can see that he is just a human being, lived like us and thought like us, and life went to continued.
And the second time he does this, it's not immediately after this. It's in chapter 20. And Sarah is considerably older then. But even then, even then when he's in Abimelech's land, Abimelech takes her. So, I mean, we're not really given a lot of, evidently his fears were grounded in some truth. There was something, you know, that they were taking her, and and it's you do kind of wonder what would have happened, and of course, again, we believe that God wouldn't have just let him get killed, but he is, as Maggie was saying, like he does prove to be somebody who has real concerns, even though he's this person we hold up as this great person of faith. When it comes to, at least when it comes to his, his family, he has some concern.
What I was reading today, that was supposedly 2000 years before Christ. And now we are 2000 years after Christ.
Yeah.
That's 4000 years later. So maybe age did not affect people the way it affects us now.
Yeah.
Maybe at age 70, it was not the very old on Social Security and retired the way it is now. So maybe people look different, look younger, and who knows really.
It does seem like kind of it's still middle age, if they were living
Yeah, exactly.
twice as long.
200?
Yeah, at least twice as long,
50,
yeah.
yeah.
But even then, you would think, not that this is like a big point of the whole thing, but I do kind of still find it odd that he had this concern, and then also that surely Pharaoh had other women. I mean, Pharaoh. I mean, I don't know how we're Pharaoh. Why would he bother?
King Solomon.
Yeah, I mean, if the policy in the land there is like, oh, there's a good-looking woman, take her to Pharaoh,
I guess that's the policy.
Which I thought was so selfish of Abraham, because he was concentrating on what will happen to me, not thinking that, oh, she'll probably be taken by Pharaoh
Yeah.
and what she would have to go through. And
Yeah.
I've always been disappointed in him for that.
Somehow,
But women were property back.
Oh, I know.
Could care less.
Yes.
somehow, I mean, it reminds me with maybe a president or someone who will surround himself with very beautiful
Well,
women.
there's no president that would do
No.
I mean, she was probably getting everything she could ask for, I guess.
I mean, we do see that he is considerate of Sarah later on, especially because he's caught in this, and this will be something we're talking about next time, but he's caught in this conflict between Sarah and Hagar, and he's trying to please Sarah, and he's concerned about Hagar. He's kind of, and of course, I mean, he did, of course, go through with that plan, but I mean, he's still trying to. He does show that he does care about Sarah. I do get that picture. So,
And men have never worried about being between two women.
no, that's never that's
Let's see what he told in the beginning too. He said they will not, as if to say he was looking after himself, and he said, just and they will not give us easy living, and he wanted the easy living and the trade and making money and having more sheep and so on. And so
So we don't get the picture that God approved of Abraham telling Sarah to do this, kind of. I mean, because it was kind of even though he says like, well, it's not really a lie. She is kind of my sister. We're sort of related, but it's still deceptive.
Oh,
But God not only brings him through this, which we're about to talk about, but if you do kind of wonder if this whole trip to Egypt was if part of the point of it was to, so Abraham's getting to see the land that he's going to inhabit, right? Or that his descendants are going to inhabit. And then he's going to go through the experience that his descendants are about to go through. I mean, he's not enslaved in Egypt, but he goes to Egypt, he gets in some trouble, and God delivers him out, and he leaves with a bunch of stuff that he didn't come there with. And also going there because of the famine. That's another thing that happens, But how much should we see, is God working through this situation? I mean, it does kind of give us a glimpse of how God can work through our decisions, like well, Abraham didn't cause the famine. That's, something he was dealing with, but also his own, so things that circumstances we find ourselves in, but also things that we do to ourselves and how God can work through that for our good. But how much of this do you see God purposefully bringing him to Egypt for that reason? Just
He was refining
refining.
Abraham,
He was what?
refining his faith. And it's what's supposed to happen to us. And I certainly have problems with that daily. With that going through the fire, I guess, removing is it dross, the impure part of the gold. Yeah.
Ooh.
And more refining with his son later.
And I guess you could say that with the people as well, although, I mean, his descendants had to spend 400 years there, but they were certainly part of that. While they were there, they were becoming a people, you could say. So even though it seemed like a really awful thing that, I used to think, oh, it's terrible that God made them have to stay there in Egypt for that long as servants, but that experience did make them into, we get the Passover, we get the whole story of Moses and God working all these wonders and bringing them out and them having that kind of stamped as their identity, but still there's also so much, like just the story of Abraham and even the story of the Exodus. It does show us that if we put ourselves in Abraham's shoes, like there's so much going on around him that he wasn't, that he wasn't aware of, that, maybe we're aware of, like, the timing had to be this, and, didn't God not let them go back to the reason they were in Egypt, not Abraham, but his descendants. They were there so long because something about the Amorites was it the iniquity of the Amorites had to be worked out, or there was some certain, and then also that God didn't bring them right into the promised land too, and there was a reason for that.
Yeah.
Things had to be done at a certain time, and that's at least just something I've kind of seen with these stories. So I guess that kind of brings me to the question of what's God's message for us in this story? Abraham was certainly an important part of God's plan, but he was still a person like we are, and he still had a lot of concerns and a lot of things he didn't know about that God knew about, and a lot of
Well,
these
I was
things.
thinking about
Yeah,
your question about the plague still.
yeah.
I mean, what's the prevailing line of thought, like, as far as you might hear it said that like God would allow bad things to happen in the world, or like because of allowing free will, essentially. Now, maybe there wasn't a choice as far as free will is concerned with a plague, but kind of sets the precedent for him not having a direct hand in everything that takes place. All right. So I mean, could that just have been Okay, well, that happened. Okay, cool. From his perspective. Uh, it doesn't necessarily mean that. So it gets back to like, do you think that um yeah, do you think that he caused that or just kind of maybe it just did happen that way and then it worked out?
Well, certainly the plagues in this case were caused to give Pharaoh a sign that now I don't
Well, I
know
mean
exactly.
the famine that caused him to deviate
Oh
to
yeah,
go there,
that. Yeah.
was that a necessary part of the story?
Yeah,
Like,
so I mean
would things
that's
have
what I
turned
would
out
want.
similarly if they had not gone to Egypt?
I mean, still God could have told him to go to Egypt, you know. Um that's but the famine was
That's true.
certainly
What I mean, what changed as a result of them going to Egypt? Like as far they got the animals and whatnot, right?
yeah, I mean he definitely went to Egypt seeking refuge, like many people do throughout. That's kind of a common pattern throughout the
Yeah.
Bible, even up into
Yeah, but how was his situation different when they left? How did that
I mean
move the
left with
plot,
more than he
essentially?
came with.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh, so
So if that hadn't happened,
yeah,
um, it would have been much more difficult to do what he did then.
I guess you could say that.
Well, like, was that a necessary circumstance? Well, it's
I
tough to
mean
say
that's
necessary,
the
but
hard part of this story because God certainly it doesn't seem like God approved of what Abraham did, and they caused
yeah, and I mean,
Pharaoh gives them the
if
gifts because Pharaoh
if
takes
if it was indeed a necessary thing,
yeah
like that, the gain that he walked out of there with was indeed a necessary thing,
yeah
inferring that or implying that it was part of God's plan, then I would question if God didn't approve, it would seem that that was part of his plan anyway. Um, and if it wasn't a necessary thing, i.e., he just like there happened to be a famine and everything, then I mean, okay,
Well, at least in the translation that I read, there in verse 17, it says, but Adonai inflicted great plagues on Pharaoh and his household because of Sarai, Abram's wife.
yeah, because Pharaoh had
So,
taken
yeah,
his wife.
yes. So that would
But
not
he
have
was
happened.
lied to.
yeah. Like, it's like you do get into kind of the moral. That is one thing about Genesis. There's not a lot of moral. We're not told like Abraham messed up. He did this, and he should have done this, or there's not a lot of that in Genesis. It just kind of presents what happened. Um,
So Pharaoh did take Abram's wife, and he shouldn't have done that. So
He didn't know.
Pharaoh got punished for what he did because Pharaoh should have known better.
And sometimes that happens, God punishes people like that, and sometimes he didn't in the Old Testament. And that's in the Bible. I
How
think
should
that
Pharaoh have known better?
everyone will be punished for the wrong things, but in this life, you can live longer and longer and prosper more and more with, with continuing doing the evil. Because this is a dark world. This is a world we live in. When we say it's not fair, that's not right. Yeah, it's not fair, not right, but that's how it is. It was, it is, and I think it will continue being till the end of the world. pain will continue. A 4 years old will get cancer. I mean, just we don't know.
Is there perhaps a lesson in this that we should
Well, there
see?
would be a difference between, I'm sorry, between allowing an unfairness to exist and directly causing that unfairness.
Hmm. I always thought this was the practice, that they knew ahead of time, or Abraham knew ahead of time that Pharaoh was likely to do this.
Well, Pharaoh also didn't, and again, I mean, I do see something in this pointing us to having some discernment or seeking some discernment, and there are sins that we commit that we know we're doing them, but then also there might be things that you might accidentally step on somebody's toe and not mean to, not
Yeah,
saying that's
that's a good point. You don't, it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be speeding
yeah.
and run somebody over.
No, I was.
Well, you still did. So, I mean, yeah.
I
Intent
didn't
doesn't
know I was
determine guilt
doing
or not.
105 miles an hour.
Only 100.
Well, there's this lady. I mean, you do wonder
But
what
but
Pharaoh.
he was directly deceived. So, I mean, not sure that quite
But why would he
still
think
holds
that
up.
was unmarried though? That was another.
Well, I'm thinking that God was punishing Pharaoh
All,
because of the
although,
general practice that
yeah,
Pharaoh
because
had of just jerking women that he wanted off the
yeah,
street.
Well, yeah. I mean, that
yeah,
was
that's
certainly.
probably it.
No,
That's
that's probably.
and if you think about it, the only reason and anybody listening to this conversation is probably like screaming in their own head this, but like the only reason that he lied was because he thought his wife was going to get killed. Or no, because he thought he was going to get killed and his wife was going to be taken. So it was kind of necessitated by Pharaoh's existing practice. So okay, there we go.
And as Abraham said, he did not really totally lied because that's his sister, because that's his
Like it's half.
sister from another mother,
Yeah,
but not from his father. So I mean, just it's like a common practice in Egypt till now to marry your cousin.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not to have to, but yeah, absolutely. That's the first place you look for a spouse, from your aunt or your uncle, from your mother's side or father's side. However, now we know that it's healthy, really. It's not healthy thing to do, but they do it there. So, I mean, he married her, and then when they said, why do you say it your sister? Well, he said, actually, I do not lie. She is my sister, but not from my father. It's from my mother, something like that.
Yeah, sister, cousin,
And I think I agree with Bill, really, that certainly it's a practice that's unethical. That's how many wives you have. Still, you see someone beautiful, you take her. But to Pharaoh's defense, he would say, well, I didn't know that she is his wife. But that's how things work.
And this might also be kind of a detail, but doesn't he tell Sarah to tell them that?
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know at least in,
Yeah.
in chapter 20, he tells Sarah to tell them
Mhm.
so he instructs her to say that.
So that lie that she tells is on him.
But then also she's obeying her husband. So
Yep. Yeah, she's, in each case,
yeah.
he, well, all down the line, he is the head of the household.
Yeah.
Just like in Eden, Eve ate the apple and nothing happened. Nothing happened until Adam took the apple and ate it. Everything was okay until the person responsible took the apple and ate it. And this is the same thing we're seeing here with Abram and Sarai.
Yeah.
He told her to tell the lie. you say that you're my sister. And well, yeah, you are.
That was a fine line he was walking.
Yes, it was a fine line, but yes, you tell the lie and, keep me from getting killed and indeed that may have been true. I mean, it may have saved Abram's life. But should he have done that? Nah, not really. She should not have lied, but he should not have told her to lie.
Oh, wait a minute, she should not have lied. When women didn't have much voice in that state. How
didn't
could
have
she?
choice.
That's
Yeah,
well, that's what he
how
was
could she
saying.
have choice?
She
No, he said she
Uh,
should not have lied.
she
Yeah.
should she should not have, ideally she should not have lied.
In
But-
today's world, she shouldn't have, but.
Right, but
But back then,
but at that time, she should have followed her husband's direction,
And she did.
and she did. It was on Abram.
I have a question. Had anyone had any other incidences in the Old Testament? Someone else lied about his wife and said she is my sister.
Abraham, as well in chapter 20,
Yeah, that's still
and
Abraham.
then his son, right? His son told
That's
did the same thing.
it's a family thing.
It's-
Like,
Like, well, it works for my dad.
This is like some kind
Who
of
did
weird
that,
story,
Jacob?
but it happens
no,
three times in the old. It happens three times in Genesis, so it's obviously something. It's obviously there's something here that God wants us to see in this.
Yes,
Yeah,
Whose son? Abraham's son.
Abram's son Isaac, right? He tells. Is it the same guy Abimelech? Was he? I mean, there are a lot of people named Abimelech in the Bible.
Yeah, it says Genesis 26.
26.
Are there really?
Like Philistine king.
Philistine.
Meaning his like Rebecca was his sister.
Well, maybe it was a common practice more than what we think.
I mean, I guess if you're at the mercy of, if you're sojourning in somebody else's turf, and you're kind of at, even though Abraham and even though his son Isaac later on, even though they were wealthy people with a lot of servants, they're still living on somebody else's land in a way. I mean, they don't own,
it's not their land.
it's not, so they're still, they try to, I know that there's another passage in there. I think it's later on when Jacob's sons, right, go and kill that whole city. But anyway, they doesn't Jacob say something like, "You made me a stench"? They try to avoid making the people around them angry. They try to,
Yeah,
because they only have so many. They can't fight them all at once.
Right.
They can protect themselves against bandits or people like that, but you don't want to. I'm trying to think of a word that's not. You don't want to anger the Pharaoh or
don't want to anger everybody.
everybody. But I do wonder, we probably won't go over chapter 20 later on, so we might as well kind of bring
Yeah.
that into this because it's kind of the same thing. It's
Well,
not the
it
same
is-
thing,
well.
but it's a variation. But God deals differently with Pharaoh than he does with this other guy. Because God sends plagues on Pharaoh.
Yes,
And then Pharaoh somehow puts two and two together and gets the message that it's because of. Now you do wonder how Pharaoh figured that out, because I guess you would say like, well, he took Sarah in and all of a sudden all this plagues start happening, But
Yeah, I wondered that as we were reading it too.
with
Like that was an awfully strong connection to make.
if you want to read the beginning of chapter 20, it kind of goes right into it. It says,
sure.
God appears in a dream. Now, this is several years after chapter 12, but
Yes,
yeah,
it's after Abram becomes Abraham.
yeah.
Abraham traveled from there toward the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur, while living as an alien in Gerar. Abraham was saying of Sarah, his wife, "She is my sister." So Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream one night and said to him, "You are about to die because of the woman you have taken, since she is someone's wife." Now Abimelech had not come near her, so he said, "Lord, will you kill even an upright nation? Didn't he himself say to me, 'She is my sister'? And even she herself said, 'He is my brother'? In doing this, my heart has been pure and my hands innocent." God said to him in the dream, "Yes, I know that in doing this, your heart has been pure, and I too have kept you from sinning against me. This is why I didn't let you touch her. Therefore, return the man's wife to him now. He is a prophet, and he will pray for you so that you will live. But if you don't return her, know that you will certainly die, you and all who belong to you." Abimelech got up early in the morning, called all his servants, and told them these things. And the men became very afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? How have I sinned against you to cause you to bring on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done things to me that are just not done." Abimelech went on, asking Abraham, "Whatever could have caused you to do such a thing?" Abraham replied, "It was because I thought there could not possibly be any fear of God in this place. So they will kill me in order to get my wife. But she actually is also my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And so she became my wife. When God had told me, 'Leave my father's house,' I told her, 'Do me this favor. Wherever we go, say about me, he is my brother.'"
Well,
So it worked well for Abraham the first time.
and then
He does it
Abimelech
again.
gives him silver and oxen
Sheep and cattle and slaves.
and
That kind of sounds like a
It's
scam,
it's
doesn't
a
it?
good scheme.
Yeah, good scam.
Oh, but there's major difference here.
Yeah, yeah.
The first major difference is Abraham is a prophet of God.
Yeah.
And even though Abraham is doing the same thing that he did with Pharaoh, Abraham is a different man at this point in time
Yeah.
than he was at the time when he dealt with Pharaoh.
I don't understand the point.
But why? Well, God did make he is a different man because God made that covenant with him.
Yes.
But he still
But
made
he's
this
still kind
choice.
of the same.
He still did the same thing.
Well,
Still
he's
the-
yeah, yes, he's he's still the same guy, and that's why he tried to do the same thing.
Yeah.
But that's why God stepped in and didn't do to Abimelech what he did to Pharaoh.
It's also implied here that Abimelech might be of better character, maybe.
Maybe.
Because God did say to him in the dream, like, "Yes, I know you didn't," but it doesn't say that with Pharaoh.
Oh, that's true.
I'm not necessarily saying Pharaoh's automatically because there were good ones and bad ones. I mean, there were
yeah,
the one that dealt with Joseph was a pretty good one, but then, the one Moses had to deal with wasn't all that great.
but I see going into it,
Yeah.
Abraham is different. God God has made him, God has changed Abraham's status
Yeah.
in the world. And
Are you saying it's more of a grace thing? Like, it's not necessarily that Abraham became, I mean, Abraham did pass some tests of faith, but it's not necessarily that he's completely sinless at this point. He's not perfect at this point, but he has God gave him a protection and a new. Is that what you're kind of saying? Like,
yes, I think it's grace, but it's grace that God is stepping in and keeping Abraham from sullying the name of God. Abraham has the covering of God at this point, and God is not going to let Abraham make God look bad.
well, and this is also important too, because, God promises Abraham a child through Sarah. And, this shows that Isaac isn't Abimelech's son,
That's true.
because that would have kind of messed that up a little bit.
Yeah, we have to know that.
Yeah.
He's saying that because he's a different man, he's not to be held as responsible for what he did. Am I
No.
lying?
No,
Okay.
I'm saying he did enter this covenant with God. And I am saying that God stepped in here and kept Abraham from making God's name be touched with any foulness, from making God look bad. Here, if Abraham had, if this had gone ahead and played out the way it did with Pharaoh, God would have looked bad, because Abraham was a prophet of God, and God would have really looked bad, because Abraham was a stand-in for God here, because he was God's prophet.
Now it's interesting that we're saying all this, because you could almost say the same is true as Christians, the same is true for us,
That's absolutely right. That's why, you see these clergy that perform some of these acts. Golly gee whiz.
But still, we have this status with God that we didn't earn, because of God because of God stepping in a sense. I mean, with Jesus. And when you mentioned that phrase, God stepping in, I thought, that actually is kind of a good title for this series, because that's kind of I was going to say God intervening, but, whenever we get to these times where it says, but God did this and changed the situation. It's, God stepping in and intervening on behalf of
Yeah,
his people, on behalf of Abraham, on
yeah.
behalf of us, really.
God stepped in on our behalf and saved us.
I like that as the main really take home is that God's grace was for his prophets in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, it's for everyone. You believe, and even if you fall, he will help you to get up and just be on your way again, and you continue going, and here it is. So God's grace is available for everyone. And sometimes we see it and we realize it and we cash it, we use it, and sometimes just it happens without us realizing it.
And I think we can kind of be like Abraham sometimes, right? And think, if we get caught in some situation, the famine wasn't his doing, having to go to Egypt, he had to do what he had to do, but kind of in the background, he had this, you get the feeling like he didn't have this firm belief that God was going to see him through the situation, that he had to do something on his own. Like, even with having Ishmael, he kind of got that wrong because God said, I'm going to give you a son. And his first instinct was, well, it's got to happen through God's not going to do it through Sarah. It's got to happen this way. They kind of, it does seem that way.
Well, Sarah and Hagar worked on him and
Yeah.
helped him to believe that.
Yeah.
And of course, then after Ishmael was born, that terrible jealousy.
Yeah.
I think also the goodness of Abraham, it's his faith starts in the beginning of chapter 12. God told him to go and leave your people, leave your uncle and aunts and so on, and leave. So he left. I mean, that's really what started, according to, I think, Paul or Peter was talking about that his faith started, God told him to go. So he went. He did not ask where, how long would it take, what does it take to prepare, how long would it be, he just went. So that's also a lesson still applies that when we think, at least in our case, when we think it clearly that that's what God wants us to do, then we should do it instead of asking how and when and what's in it for me and all that.
Yeah.
And you could almost say that our status now we tend to look at things as humans, we tend to look at things in a relative, like I'm going to kind of draw a little comparison here, like our status with God in a way is closer or better than, at least as good as, Abraham's status with God was at this point.
I think it's closer.
Yeah, it's closer.
Oh, yeah, it's closer.
Rather than God.
But that's hard to take in, isn't it? I mean, because Abraham was one guy out of the world, and Noah was one person out of, but if you look at absolute terms, we have a closer standing with God because of what Jesus did. I guess kind of a similar example, and this kind of falls short a little bit, but like we look at people in the past, take a king from 500 years ago, like how they would live. Like, we live better than they did in a lot of ways. I mean,
Well, then
I think about that not too infrequently, actually.
now they had somebody holding a bucket,
We
but
have solar and jacuzzi.
the jacuzzi, yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Nathaniel?
I said I actually think about that not too infrequently.
Yeah.
Usually when I'm taking a shower or something, I'll think, man, up until like, 100 years ago or something, no one had a, after a long day, a shower feels pretty good. Warm, hot shower. So few people in the history of, or like when I'm on a plane or something, it's like, okay, well, you know, all these thousands and, well, millions, but, you know, all these years of humans living and no one ever saw, things like this.
And you can take showers on planes now too.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Good to know.
Airlines.
Hmm.
But that, that just goes to show how we think, and just seeing Abraham as this, it's easy to kind of see him as this standalone guy that God really favored and he was unique, but in a sense, we're in the same position as in our relationship with God. We're in a closer position, not because of anything we did, but we're considered God's children. And we kind of make the same mistake too of thinking we find ourselves in certain situations, we tend to start thinking like, well, how is God going to take us through this? Or, do I need to do. Now, there's nothing wrong with preparing. I'm not saying, if there's nothing wrong with going to Kroger and getting extra food if your water, if there's going to be an ice storm or something like that. But, being afraid and being anxious about things, it is a human trait, but I guess it's easy for us to look at Abraham and be like, oh, he should have just had more faith, but not saying we're going around telling people our wife is a sister, but
A little bit of the chocolate wrapper, I think. A little bit of silver part.
although I've done that a few times, just it was like, you're so beautiful, just tell them. I was, there's a little dog.
He's not telling.
Did you get it down? Okay.
I thought I was real careful.
And,
Hmm.
well,
What did you eat? Look at you eat. Was it good?
I'm seeing if there was anything else. I mean, Abraham did a lot for somebody, well, for anybody, really. I mean, a lot of traveling, a lot of tests of faith that he had to go through, and he had quite a life. It does make you wonder why I know this is kind of a little bit off topic, but why God chose him. I do kind of wonder that out of everybody. But I mean, we are told with Noah why God chose Noah, just because he was the only one that was like even remotely decent, worth saving out of the whole bunch. But we're not told a whole lot about Abraham. I think there's some extra biblical stuff that goes into what his background was, but as far as what's in the Bible, it is
I think God saw a lot of potential.
a lot of
with Abraham.
potential. God sees the potential. Oh, one other thing. We are sojourners like Abraham. That's another theme I meant to touch on. So we are not too different. We're citizens of the kingdom of God, and we're living in this kind of like Abraham was living in these places that he technically, God had promised, but he didn't own. If that makes sense. Only that. Best way of saying it. Didn't Paul say we're sojourners or something like in one of the letters?
Sounds familiar.
I know Jesus would talk about the kingdom of God, and but
We are all on a journey.
yeah,
Being
in the world but not of the world. I think that's the phrase I was thinking of.
Yes. Yeah, when we think about that, if we actually think of our lives as a journey, even as young as some of you are. Um, uh, it is a real journey because it's uh, uh, even at my age, I know it's still a journey because we're changing the time in which we find ourselves. And that's really important because that change in time gives us an opportunity to look for different, uh, uh, not to look for different signposts, but to actually check out the different landscape that we're passing. Even if it appears to be the same physical area that is changing around us, the landscapes of people, the landscapes of thought, uh, uh, the landscapes of beliefs that we experience on a daily basis are important. And uh, how we interact with those things, with those thoughts that we come upon every day. That's really important.
Well, and it does sometimes seem like a lot of the things that we see, be they in the news or current events or things happening around us, are new things, but something we realize even looking at these stories in Genesis and in the time of Jesus as well, that these themes keep coming up about human nature and who God is and those things that are true kind of throughout all time. Hopefully that didn't derail from what you were saying. But
No, not at all, because as we come upon people in our daily life, the things we see and do in our trips to the grocery store and uh, to the drugstore, and some of these things will impact different people in really different ways. And the opportunities that it will provide us to help them experience Christ is important.
And something that does strike you about Abraham, especially for somebody in that time, the amount, the places that God sent him and the people that he came in contact with and the different cultures. And it is kind of, I know today we kind of, we can get on a plane and go to Egypt and find somebody that can translate Arabic, or we can, somebody that speaks English there. We can go on a tour and see the pyramids. We can, but it wasn't like that, back then. It was Abraham was going into these different cultures and kingdoms, and there might have been some common language. I don't know what the language they were speaking in Egypt was back in 2000 BC. I mean, I guess you could say it was Egyptian, but Arabic was Arabic around.
Maybe hieroglyphic.
Arabic was around 2000.
Arabic came with the Arabs from
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia and the spread of Islam, and that's about 700, 800
Yeah.
after post-Christ.
Well, I know they were using hieroglyphics, but they weren't, whatever they were speaking the same language that Abraham spoke. I don't know.
Aramaic was being
Aramaic.
spoken.
Yes.
I know that was the language of some of the
Yeah.
people.
But you do wonder, you kind of have this God using Abraham in this way, and you do kind of wonder what would have become of him if he said no, or he didn't leave, become a sojourner, if he just stayed. Because he didn't have a bad situation going on in Haran or in Ur. He was pretty well off. He didn't have to travel across the Fertile Crescent to the other side of, I mean, most people back then didn't travel that much unless their life depended on it. I mean,
God would have known a different individual.
yeah. But he
His
came
name
across,
would not have been Abraham.
but Abraham came across so many different people, the Pharaoh, all the kings that he dealt with later on in that area in Canaan,
And so we do
Yeah.
in life. Every single day, you meet different people.
yeah,
I mean, different, it doesn't mean not American.
yeah,
It can just different in everything, a different day. And as you two said, really, I like that. And as long as you're alive, it's another chance for you to present God and to present Christ and uh, his love and the way he wants us to live. You present it to them through you. So that's more or less what Abraham was doing. Yeah, it can apply. And he was a human being. He did deceive, but as you said, he went to areas maybe he was not planning certainly to go there.
And that's a good point, like, God can still use, even if we make mistakes,
Yeah.
he can still use us.
Yeah.
He can get us out of trouble, so to speak.
Yeah.
Things that we bring up on ourselves, I
Yeah.
guess, and still use that for
Yeah.
something good to happen.
Yeah.
So we don't have to have perfect faith all the time.
And for us to claim that we are follower or children of God, then we should really present him. We should not be the opposite of him or just present ourselves. So, yeah, but as long as we pray to God.
He just wants us to be out there and plant a seed. It's not our job to go out there and grab somebody and teach them all about. I mean, we may have some part in discipling someone, but we're ambassadors. Hi there, I'd like for you to meet Jesus and pass that person off to the Holy Spirit. And then it's up to the Holy Spirit. I mean, if we're some part in that person's life later down the pike, well, that's cool. But if we aren't, that's cool too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the common thread is God working through us.
Yes. And that's the way it was with Abraham.
Yeah.
He was, as we see, and I mean, and that's the common thread that I see throughout Scripture. We see common people, warts and all. They all have faults. And the really big common thread among them is they love God. They choose to love the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob.
And something else to kind of leave with, which is an encouraging part of this. I mean, that's encouraging, but also remember that, remember who your deliverer is, because that's kind of something that, we see Abraham being delivered by God through this situation, as we'll see later on in the story of Exodus, that's kind of the deliverer,
Yeah.
God provides, and delivering us from sin and not having a right standing with God, but also from just messes that, messes we get ourselves into, things that happen in the world that are outside of our control, places we find ourselves. So easier said than done, but don't be anxious.
Yes.
And well, do we have any other thoughts on this? I know we kind of talked about everything this time, it seems, but well, not everything, but certainly a lot. I mean, there's a lot to see in the life of Abraham, and I believe next time we will be talking about, I think, well, we'll still be talking about Abraham next time because, well, in a sense, we'll also be talking about Hagar and Sarah. And God actually, what did we say? God stepping in? Is that what we're going with? Was the title? God stepping in. God stepping in to all three of their situations, how giving Abraham some clarity, even though Abraham went the route of going with Hagar and doing that thing. And
Well, now he had a lot of help in that.
he had a lot of help, but then also God sees Hagar in her situation, and she tries to run away, and then God also kind of, even though Sarah was jealous and being mean to Hagar, God helped her with having Isaac as as the one to carry on but he didn't forget about Ishmael, of course, but we'll talk about that next time. It was another situation that is very similar to this, because again, Abraham makes a decision and God steps in and gets them through it. Now there was some arguments and some things that happened, but it worked out. So, well, unless there's any other thoughts, or I heard a computer turn on or something. Yeah. Oh, that was mine. Oh, it probably says low battery. Well, if you'd like to sign us off, well,
Live long and prosper.